Hi, my name is Hamza, and I'm going to talk about our paper on the survival analysis of publicly available Python projects. Open source software development has always caught the eyes of those who want to volunteer their time working on something that doesn't quite require strict deadlines or set working hours. These projects are maintained by decentralized teams with low operational costs and are able to produce software that are used by millions. If someone is interested in contributing to these projects, there needs to be a way to ensure that the project is not in danger of being abandoned. This is where health of a software project becomes an important feature to study. Health of an open source software project is perceived as how likely is it that a project will become a success and won't end up being abandoned midway. Researchers that have studied this phenomenon have found that working hours, organizational support, and the developer team size and interest all contribute to the success or failure of an open source project. One way to measure if an entity's survival chances are high after some passage of time is to use survival analysis. This method is commonly applied in medical studies where patients with and without a treatment intervention are observed until an event of interest occurs. In the scope of the health of an open source software project, the event of interest in related studies has been defined as the time until a new developer stops making commits, or a month-by-month analysis of activity until no new changes are made, or when there is no activity at all. We will use that last mentioned event for our study. We define a single cutoff point in January 2018, and for each project see if there has been any activity within the last 2 months of the cutoff. Projects with activity within that period of time are deemed active, while the rest are deemed inactive. Projects that started after the cutoff are removed from the study. We're using a subset of the data amassed by the Software Heritage Group of nearly 3,000 popular open source projects written in Python that are hosted on GitHub, GitLab, PyPI, and Debian. The features we focus on are whether major updates have been made, where the project repository is hosted, and how many developers have authored revisions. So the approach now is to use the survival analysis and see what are the chances that a project with a variation of these features will remain active. We use Kaplan-Meier curves, an application of survival analysis that gives a visual representation of the survival probabilities over time. So you can measure the chances of survival of projects that use GitHub versus those that use Debian and are able to visualize which set of projects has a higher chance of survival. We also use a Cox proportional hazards model to fit the features we have selected to quantify exactly how much of a difference these features will make for a project's survival. The model gives a ratio on how likely it is that a project will become abandoned when having one trait over another. The Kaplan-Meier curves show a clear difference in survival chances for projects that had major releases, were using multiple hosting services, or had at least 20 unique developers who had authored a revision. We also found that projects that were hosted on GitLab and GitHub have a higher chance of survival compared to those that were only hosted on Debian and PyPI, but only in the long run. This is interesting as the hosting service hasn't been used as a covariate for a project's health before. A project with no major release is failing to meet targets and becomes a serious contender for abandonment. Similarly, if a project is hosted on multiple services, that means that it has evolved to be able to cater to different platforms, and that is a sign of success. We quantify these results using the Cox proportional hazards model by fitting a regression model to estimate the effects of these features. We find that projects with no releases are 3 times more likely to become abandoned, and those with less than 20 developers are 6 times more likely. Hosting the project repository on PyPI and Debian positively contributes to the project's survival overall, and so does hosting it on more than one repository service. In conclusion, we extracted information about changes made to around 2,200 open source Python projects and found that having releases, a healthy number of developers contributing to updates, and where the project repository is hosted are all significant factors in determining the long-term health of an open source project. So if you're interested in volunteering your time to an open source project of your interest, you should definitely look into these features first. Thank you.